Hey folks, Michael here from Planet All, and welcome back to our Growee Pro series on setting up your first hydroponic grow from the beginning straight to your harvest. So in this video, we're going to focus on plumbing. Last time we got all of our buckets set and ready to go. Now we need to connect them, fill them with water, and get everything flowing. We're going to be covering how we're delivering the water into those buckets, as well as letting it recirculate back, so we know that we've got a dynamic system that our Growee Pro can keep an eye on and have it managed for us once we've got plants in there. All right, so let's head back over to the workbench. We're going to look at a few different details, and then we're going to start installing these buckets right into the tent.
Okay, next up is going to be assembling our actual linkages here. So this is connecting the bulkheads. It might seem like you should put the bulkhead on the bucket and then put the pipe on the bulkhead. And that would be fine if these could turn freely, but this is one fixed unit. You absolutely could make this a free turning unit if you used PVC couplers. They are very expensive. So this way we don't have to do that. Just like any plastic threading, we are going to be using pipe thread sealant. These are basically the same thing, different brands. This one comes in the toothpaste tube factor, so it might be a little bit easier for you. This is the brush on kind of variety, but either way, gloves are a good idea. It does clean up pretty easily, but it is goopy, and why bother with that? All right, so we've got our bulkheads. Make sure that you have them facing the right way. The domed section, this is going to be the outside of the bucket. This will be the inside of the bucket. So it means we're going to be putting the thread sealant on the PVC. So here's that toothpaste tube version. Like I said, they're same thing, just different brands, different form factor in terms of how it's dispensed. But just a little squeeze out. Make one lap around, then just kind of gently make sure it's all the way in those first couple revolutions of threads. And then you can kind of waste not, want not. Scrape it off on the other side. All right, and we just thread it on. Now, this is not going to be under pressure. This is just flowing back. So turn it until it's hand tight. Get a gloved finger in there. Wipe up the excess, and then use it on the other side. And just do this for all of your joints. We're going to be doing the 3 linkages that go between the 4 buckets. The last segments will be what we attach right to the reservoir. Remember, just hand tight, nothing fancy. And then wipe up your goop. Okay, if you miss a little gap in there, don't worry. Just make sure that as you press it down lightly into the threads, that it's contiguous all the way around. That looks pretty darn good. Okay, there we go. 3 linkages. Now let's go assemble them. Okay, so next up we have to connect our buckets. This step absolutely should happen inside your grow tent. It's going to make your life easier. Unfortunately, in this scenario, it's a lot harder for you to see what I'm doing if I do it in the grow tent. So I'm going to assemble one of these to the 2 buckets here, so you can get a nice big view of it, and then I'll put the rest together because the process is identical for every single place that you have a bulkhead. All right, so here is our double-ended bulkhead. It's threaded. We've got our thread putty in there. We just need to take these threaded nuts off first. Okay, there we go. And now we need to give them a quick inspection. The manufacturer actually sends a little note asking you to look at these surfaces here and the one underneath the gasket and make sure that they're basically smooth. In the casting process, sometimes you'll get these little leftover bits. They're not terribly common in something this quality, but if they are there, you need to just gently sand them down, make them smooth again, so when this is all closed up, you have a watertight seal and not one that's ever so slowly dripping your way to a giant pool of water. So get these collars off, leave the gaskets on the outside edge, and then we're going to put them into the buckets. All right, so here we are. You've got a nice top-down view there of the inside of my bucket. I'm going to reach in with the nut. Gentle wipe. Make sure you've got no little leftover crumbs on the surface you're closing. I shop vac all this out afterwards. And then just tighten it down. Now, odds are you're going to get 99.9% of the way tight without too much effort. There we go. All right, so it's on, but is it tight? Oh, by hand, it's hard to tell. Well, that's where this little puppy comes in. This is a wrench designed specifically for removing the oil filter on a car if you're changing your own oil. It works perfectly for these. So when you're inside the bucket, you just kind of give it a grab like that and get those couple extra little twists out of it. The first time I built one of these systems, I didn't have this wrench. There were some leaks. I went out, grabbed this wrench on the recommendation of a friend because the biggest wrench I had was nowhere close to big enough. And it worked a charm. Tiniest little twist makes all the difference in the world. So let's bring over the bucket here and just make sure you're going the right way. Get it into place, give it a good grab, and a couple twists. Nothing crazy. You have to remember, these are plastic threads. They're not designed for high tension, but because they are plastic, they are going to deform easily. That's part of what gives them the possibility of such a great bond. And you know, that's not going anywhere. But we have to make sure that we take care of them and tighten them up that way, right, or the right way, the first time. All right, I'm going to go ahead and make that connection and then a couple more, and I'll see you back at the tent for the next step. We have 3 of our 4 buckets connected. Before we attach number 4, there's a couple things we need. One, I like these. These are 1/2-inch foam board insulation product. I cut these to just a little bit bigger than the underside of my buckets to serve as a gasket. My tent is in my basement, so cold floors, which isn't always the best thing. This gives me a little bit of insulation between the water of my bucket and the cement of the floor. Also, since this is slightly compressible, if there are tiny little height differences between my buckets, this will help adapt for that. So I just slip them under each one. Okay, and before number 4 goes into place, we need to take a couple more measurements because now is our time to figure out how this connection is being made. What you want to do is measure from the middle of the hole in your bucket to the middle of the port that you're coming out. All right, so that's 20 inches, almost 19 inches, almost dead on. Odds are we'll have to trim this to the very end here to make the turn we want because we're also going to be coming from the 4th bucket out as well. And there's going to be a little bit of negotiation there, but if we start with that length, we can attach it, put it in place, and then trim it as we need. Beyond that, bucket number 4 can get attached now. Okay, remember how I said we're not drilling that last hole yet in bucket 4? Well, this is why. So we need to be able to take a look at this space a little bit more complete. And so here is the access pipe for bucket 1, and that's going to be going at a small incline so it can just barely clear through the opening. So I've got a couple inches I can trim off there, but if you look at the alignment from the side of the bucket to the port here, I do need to put that other hole as far to the corner as I can. So now I'm going to go back, I'm going to drill that hole, keeping the height the same, so I'm as close to the bottom as possible. Then I can put the port here, and then we'll build the segment that's going to take us up and over through the porthole. All right, so now we're looking at what's going to be that linkage going from bucket number 4 up and out the porthole. You already saw the kind of long one that's going to work on a slight incline to make its way up to that hole. But this one's a little different. It's very, very close. So what we're going to do is we have our bulkhead, our threaded PVC fitting, a little short extension on that PVC, mostly just to connect these two pieces together, but to get us closer to that port. And then a very small section of PVC is going to get glued in here to here. And when those compact down, it's just going to be about that big. And it's just going to clear the lip of that opening. Once this and the linkage from bucket 1 is assembled and in place, we'll take another look at it, because that's when we have to go from here, hop out through the wall, and then back down to head over to our reservoir bucket on the other side of the tent that's on the other side of a wall. All right, let me get this glued up. All right, hold it for a few seconds. And we're good to go to the next step. Alrighty, let's take a peek here. We have from bucket 1, our very long extension on a slow incline. From bucket 4, we have the other side of our loop. They're approximately at the same height. We'll tweak that a little bit as we go. The important thing here is going to be what is going on the other side and how long we need to make some of these parts. So let's do some measurement. Okay, here we are. Here is the port from the tent coming through the wall. And two things need to happen. I need to estimate what this linkage length needs to be, and then also that linkage length. So there's a couple different ways we can do this. I found the easiest way is to make approximate but knowingly long cuts. PVC itself is relatively inexpensive. The fittings, however, are not. So if I measure from the inside of the hole out, I'm looking at 8 inches maximum. So I will make the 2 bulkhead pieces, and then I will cut the PVC to 7 inches, because that coupling piece adds about 1 inch. Coming out from the side here, it looks like I'm going to need about, let's get to the lip, about 14 inches for one. And oh, look at that, 14 inches for the other. So I need 2 7-inch pieces of PVC, 2 14-inch pieces of PVC, and then we'll glue them all together and attach. All right, so we are all set to double check the lengths, and I can guarantee you I cut these with overage just to make my life easier, big picture wise, even though it is a little wasteful material wise. So what we have here, reservoir bucket, in the position that I want it to be. I want to try and keep it nice and tight here, so I'm preserving space. I've got my little piece of foam that my other buckets are on, so they should be equal height-wise, or very, very close. In here, you can see there's the 2 opposite sides of the loop, and I've already attached these pieces to the reservoir bucket. This is going to allow us to line up the pipes and just mark, I've got a grease pencil here, where the cuts need to happen. And then we know everything's going to fit. We don't have to worry about any kind of translation error between measurements and markups and cutting, things like that. This wouldn't be a great approach for all of the build, but for this stage, it really does make this kind of funny exchange that much easier to manage. All right, so first off, I'm guessing the one in the back, the upper one there coming off bucket 1, is going to be bang on for one of these 2 pipes. And it doesn't matter which pipe it goes into, because we're not actually forcing flow through here. The water's just settling and recirculating because we're going to be pumping out. So let's try lining it up. I'm just going to reach in so I know that I'm lining it up properly with where the flange is. And that is incredibly close. I just need to take a tiny bit off. I've placed my finger right where it needs to be. All right. Leave a mark. So this piece of pipe will get trimmed right there, and then it's going to be attached, and then we'll make the elbow coming down to here, Now the other thing worth taking a look at, I'm just going to rest it inside the pipe so I know I'm lined up properly, is where here I need to cut off. So I'm going to be adding another elbow that's going to come this way. Height-wise, it is almost bang on perfect, so I don't think I'm going to need much of a spacer here, but I am going to need to cut that pipe right there. Alternatively, I could just leave this and then push this this bucket and pipe assembly back further, but I usually store stuff back there, so I don't want to cut into that space any more than I have to. All right, so just to make things really easy, I'm going to put a number 1 here and a number 1 here. And then when I come back with my parts, I'm not going to mix up who's going where. All right. Next up is this one. So if I just come right up to it, it's obviously way too long. I was a bit ambitious there, but that's okay because we're just going to trim it off as needed. So that's actually looking pretty good. I'm lining up my finger with it's the back of the flange here. That's where we know the pipe is going to finish seating when we glue it. All right, little mark right there. And if I just rough it out, this one, yeah, this is going to need a little trimming as well, right about there. Then we're going to mark this 4 for bucket number 4, 4 for bucket number 4. All right, so I have 2 4 cuts to do, and then we're going to be adding that last elbow set. All right, all the parts are here. Moment of truth, final assembly. All righty, that one went pretty well. Now for the longer one. All right, that's it. We have our connections to bucket 1, bucket 2 set. They are roughly at the same height going in, so we're going to get really great flow. Everything's sealed. Now we just have to attach the supply side. They'll be coming from the reservoir, and we can water test the whole system. All right, home stretch. We just have to get the positive flow side of our system up and running. So it's really, really hard to get this on camera while I'm assembling it. So this is just kind of representative of what you're going to be working with if you use one of these PA hydroponic systems. You have your bulkheads, and then you have your hosing with your connectors. Now, the system comes pre-assembled for the most part, and you have a couple extra pieces. You do have to request the bulkheads. Not everybody wants them, but it's on the same order page. And these are really simple. Unlike a lot of vinyl tubing, if you've dealt with it before, a lot of times the spur connectors are just absolutely impossible to get into the vinyl tubing, and then you have to heat it up and really shove, and it's really frustrating. PA Hydroponics has gone out of its way to find a very good fit. And now granted, I'm a relatively strong guy, but that just wasn't that hard. And you can, because it is a really good close fit, you can get them off again. So you can do a couple test fittings without fatiguing the hose. They are 4 barb on everything, and so you don't need clamps afterwards. You just push them together and you're done. Okay, so let's look at it in the tent. All right, so here we are. You should recognize most of this. So we're all plumbed up, and here is the feeding system. So this is the supply side. This is being pumped out of the reservoir, attaches to our bulkheads. Everything's pushed on. I didn't have to use any clamps. There they are. And remember, here's one of the important details. The distance from the T out to each of the buckets needs to be equal, and it comes cut that way. This way, each bucket gets an even distribution. The rest of it here, the hose leading out and ultimately to the reservoir, that's just one run. So it's going to be the same amount of pressure until you get to that T. All right, let's start filling this system with water. Okay, here we are, very, very close to the finish line. Last addition, and this is part of filling with water, I'm putting in a float valve. So this is a float valve from Aquatic Life. It's really designed for fish tanks. But that'll be going through that one last hole there. So the entire reservoir and system is going to top up directly off my roadie filter, which is going to be coming in on this line here. So hole for that. I went ahead and put in the bulkhead for the circulation pump. You can see it down there now. And it has an aspiration line. That's that little white line there. So this line is going to pull in air here as it pumps out and then into the system. So between the air that's being pulled up here and then inside the grow buckets, the waterfall effect from this cascading out towards the top of the bucket, we're going to be adding a lot of gas to our water. And that helps us get around the need for like air stones and things like that. You can certainly always add them. I have had grows where I've added an air stone here in the reservoir, and so it's aerating this water and then heading out to the system. But this is a nice alternative. This pump, actually, so this is a active aqua pump. This came as an option with the recirculation line from PA Hydroponics. So one-stop shopping, really quality stuff. And again, it's just one of those parts that works well, and so I like sticking with it. All right, I'm gonna get the float valve here installed, and we'll take one last look at the system. All right, there you have it. It is up and running. Now you can hear the last little bit of top off coming through the float valve. I did fill the system almost entirely from my tap water, not my roadie filter. It would just be a waste at this point. But I wanted to make sure that that's going to cut off, so it's starting to slow down. It'll stop in just a moment. There are no leaks. It is bone dry at every single fitting. And you can see some little bits and pieces floating in there. This is one of the reasons why you start running it long before you're going to put plants in. Check for leaks, no leaks. I'm going to skim out all those little floaties in there, and then the tap water is going to serve to just kind of clean out everything, so I know the system is ready to attach to the Growee.
Great. That wraps up this video, and we have our system running with tap water in it to wash everything out and make sure that all of our connections are nice and sealed and everything stays bone dry. In the notes below, you're going to find links to everything I'm using, as well as a link over to Growee itself. Make sure you check them out. Tons of great information there on their website, and if you sign up for their newsletter, you're going to get a 5% off coupon off your purchase of a Growee setup. Also below is a link to Muckles Incorporated, our other sponsor. So if you're interested in supporting what I'm doing here, and you could use a new hockey hoodie or a t-shirt or a hat, head on over, follow that link. Sales through Muckles Incorporated helps support the channel, as well as just get the word out there that there's valuable content available. Please make sure that you like and subscribe below and hit that little bell. That way you're going to get a notification as every single one of these videos is out there, and you can kind of keep pace with your own project as well. All right, that's it for this time. Make sure that you hit those links below and like and subscribe and hit that little bell so you get a notification the next video out. Make sure that you're having fun with this and plant it all.